Hi and welcome. I'm Kat with the Oklahoma Faith Network, and I'm very excited for this conversation tonight because I think I had this idea for this conversation maybe 2 years ago or more that I've just been personally really interested in. I just know so many people who have left the faith tradition that they grew up in and have just been on a different journey.
So thank you all for participating tonight. I really appreciate it because this is a pretty personal conversation. I mean, a lot of the conversations that we have are very personal. Obviously, you're talking about faith, but this is a really particularly sensitive conversation. I think it actually took a while, that 2 years to get this going, because it was hard to find people who were willing to speak about their journey and their feelings about what led them to this decision that they made, and then what the experience has been like. So can you all introduce yourselves the way that you want to be identified, and just share however you would like to, and maybe starting with Takita?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Takita. I'm from Wichita, Kansas. I am a single mother of a 5-year-old. So if you see me talking off to the side, that's because she's right next to me. I'm really excited to be here. I got called upon by a friend of mine and asked if I was willing to share, and I'm grateful to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Aubrey?
I'm Aubrey Quick. I'm born and raised in Oklahoma, and I am a social worker. And I was a former intern for Oklahoma Faith Network, so that's my connection. And that was actually my first time touching base with anything related to faith after leaving. So
I remember that process, that initially at the OU School of Social Work, we were listed as the Oklahoma Conference of Churches, and you had some feelings about that initially. We had to kind of talk you down. And as usual, give our 15, whenever I tell people who I work for or what I do, there's then another 15 minutes where I explain that we're really the opposite of what they probably assume that we are. So I'm glad that we were able to lure you in, Aubrey, despite all that. And that's why we changed our name too to the Oklahoma Faith Network.
Okay. And um, my name is Vinay Tarankal. I'm a structural engineer by profession. Came to Norman. I live in Norman, Oklahoma. Came to Norman in 2001 to go to OU. I never left. Found my wife here as well. I was good friends with Kat. I'm in this circle.
I'm sort of joining in on this conversation too, because I also left the faith tradition that I grew up in at a very similar time that my best friend and Vinay did. So starting out, just if you can give a little bit, and you can be as specific or vague as you'd like to be, this sort of about what age did you decide to leave the faith tradition that you grew up in? And then sort of what was the specific reason, or were there many reasons, or what was the thought process behind that decision? Aubrey, do you want to start us out?
yeah, I can. I think the age where it was official, I'm not going back, was probably around 21 for me. But it was a culmination of little moments up to that, final, I'm done. I think the biggest reason, I mean, there's a bunch of little reasons, but they all plug into this main theme. I grew up very involved in the church, and even went to a private Christian college for my undergrad. And I think over those experiences, I just became really disillusioned with the church. And I didn't think that they were living out the principle of loving your neighbor as yourself. I didn't see that anywhere in the communities I was in. And I just saw a lot of unkindness and perpetuating of abuse. And so I was ready to leave. My questions and doubts were not met with anything other than we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to ask those questions. And so by the time I hit 21, I was no longer attending the church, and was ready to stop professing belief in all of that.
Okay. Takita, how about you?
It was much later for me. I guess I'm still loosely connected in certain ways, but I left my faith tradition probably in my 30s, late 20s, early 30s. Um, and that was just because, uh, as a Black woman, I felt like um, Christianity didn't really speak to me anymore, as far as it's related to how Christianity was brought to Black Americans. And so I feel like that kind of started the descent or ascent, depending on who you ask, um, into my leaving the church for good. I was actually pretty involved in my church. I was in young adult ministry, actually even considered going to seminary for a little bit myself. Um, and oddly enough, I'm still kind of thinking about I'd love to go to seminary just because I really enjoy the history, but would not like to be. I'm kind of agnostic right now, so yeah, that's how my journey has gone so far.
Okay, thank you. Vinay, how about you?
So I was even later than that. I was about 40 years of age when I finally stepped away from Catholic Church. I grew up in a very heavily, predominantly Catholic family. Um, the church I grew up in was built in the 1465. That's how old the
Oh my
history of
gosh.
the town that I go to. I grew up in goes back to. And we had 3 priests and 4 nuns in my grandmother's family. So that's the kind of background I came from. It's as Catholic as you can be. Um, Not a very specific reason, but many reasons, right? And like Aubrey said, Catholic Church don't live the life they preach. They just don't. And one of the biggest thing about church that I hate is a strong word, but the entire church I think is built around the feeling of guilt. Everything associated with guilt. I just hate that. Um, and the way that the church uses the guilt to control you, to control your life, control everything around you. And it's a lot about its money too. And like I said, I had 3 priests in the family. I saw one living like a king in his parish, and one who walked barefoot in villages serving people. So I saw both within my family. Um, and then the folks who would, even in the east, that I would, I thought what they preached in church. For example, one time, one of the biggest break for me came one time in the sermon. He said, you cannot love Jesus if you cannot love your neighbor. Right after that, he got on Facebook and started bashing people. I mean, people he didn't agree with politically. To me, that was just leaving the church, so to speak. 100%. I'm like, I'm not just not going back. So that's how I left the church, and was kind of floating for several years. Didn't do anything. Then my wife was she went to a couple of churches, and then I went to that church one time, and I fell in love with it. It was everything that I was hoping a church would be, with not any of the baggages of the church that I came from or left.
So it sounds like all four of us have kind of a similar, where it wasn't, one day we decided that this was not a good fit for us, that there were some levels of discomfort, whether that was felt in the body or whether that was sort of more like about the doctrine, or like how the behavior that we were seeing in the church, that was sort of building up over time. And then maybe there was, I feel like for me, it was the thing that pushed me over the edge, where I just felt like I couldn't participate anymore, was the treatment of same-sex couples in the church that I was growing up in. And I was, I think, probably 24, 25. So, and up till then, I had a really, really great, I mean, I had the best experience that you could possibly have growing up in this faith tradition. Like, I really lovely people, strong community. My parents, my family were not really that intense about it. I was never really, threatened with the fear of hell or damnation, or felt like my behavior needed to be controlled anyway. It just didn't feel right. It just wasn't a good fit. I just felt like I had my own beliefs about God, and it just didn't really reflect the God or the universe of the world that was being portrayed as part of the narrative of this community. But religion was one of my majors in college. And so I remember clearly studying that most people are part of their faith community, not because they believe 100% in everything that tradition teaches. Everybody belongs to their faith community because of the community, because, it's the people that they know, it's the culture they grew up with, it's the people they love, it's their family, it's familiar, it's comfortable. And I think a lot of churches are really good at that. And so that's part of what, because so much of it is like your spiritual connection. It's it is in your body. So like, if the Catholic Church, for example, like uses a lot of like sensory, like the incense, the sounds, it's all sort of like really putting you in a specific place, like your body in a specific place, to bring you to that place to connect with the sacred. But there was this level of discomfort that just sort of grew and grew with, at that time period, there was a lot. I think the four of us, my mom did think that I had led all of you away. And I said, thank you. That's really nice that you think that I'm like a charismatic cult leader that can just lure these people away from their faith. But it was because at that time there were so many, they were coming out hard against their own practitioners who were doing really wonderful work with the poor, reproductive justice, same-sex marriage, same-sex couples, just the gay community altogether. Coming hard against women and their role in the church. Like, it was just like all this really intense stuff where it was just like, we can't abide by this. This just does not feel right to be a part of this. And it eventually overwhelmed the part of me that wanted to stay for the community. And so it sounds like that was kind of a similar journey that I'm hearing from you all as well, that it wasn't just like one thing or necessarily like a traumatic event. It was, just a sense of being out of alignment, and just being more sure of who you were, and that this was not quite this tradition or these beliefs or this environment is not lining up with who I am or who I want to be. Does that sound?
That sounds about right to me. I definitely, like, it resonated with me when Renee, you spoke about the guilt. That was one thing that I didn't want to continue to feel, the guilt of, the possible damnation or whatever for my humanness. And so I totally get that.
I mean, the one thing that I find fascinating is, how church talks about fairness, equality, and everything. In the same breath, they treat women as second-class citizens. Women can't do certain things. Women can't do this. Women can't be priests. Women can, for all the reasons they make up. And then you go back to, I mean, so those are the things that tree bubbles up, and as you grow up, as you look around, it's like, it doesn't make sense. You can't be saying the same thing and go against the very thing that you preach. But again, the faith that I left, that loves to do that quite a bit.
So what was that like for you all during that time period when you decided to leave? What can you talk a little bit, each of you, about what was that process like? Did you have to sever important relationships? Did it cause, like I said, my mom did not handle it well on my end. Aubrey, you want to start out a little bit if you could share about that time?
Yeah, it was a little anticlimactic in that I had been like emotionally and socially disengaging from my faith community for a while and had already like taken breaks from like attending and stuff like that. And it was around that time where I had gone off to college. And so, like you grow up in a church, you go off to college, you don't go as much because you're, in a different community, in a different place. But I wasn't very like loud about it. To this day, most of my family knows that I don't go to church. They don't know that I don't profess faith or any religious belief at all. It helped a little bit because my now husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, was going through a very similar process. And so we were kind of together in that. And the church was like the place where I got all of my social engagement. Like I didn't make friends at school. I made friends at church because I spent so much time there. And I still maintained those friendships outside of the church because a lot of us had gone to the same college. A lot of us were still in the same, we're still in OKC. And so we still like spent time together. Eventually those relationships did end, partly because I was no longer engaging in a faith that they were, but there were also other factors. It was just like a really long, drawn out process. And I didn't get a lot of pushback because I wasn't really like talking to people about it, or I wasn't like, hey mom, I'm never going to go to church again because I think that everyone there is mean and awful. So like those conversations never really happened. I just kind of did it and ended up just leaving, and nobody really like reached out after. So that kind of confirmed it for me, honestly. Nobody was like, hey, you haven't been to church in a couple months. They just kind of let it go. And I was like, well, that's affirming in my decision. So.
Okay. Takeda, how about you?
I have not severed many relationships because of my removal or my leaving the faith. My uncle is actually the pastor of the church that I was attending. And so, I still see them regularly. My mother is over the kitchen ministry. I mean, there's lots of things. It wasn't like Aubrey said, it wasn't like an abrupt stop going. It was just kind of like a eventual, I'm going to stop going to church, to that particular church for sure. And then I'm going to, get off the ministries that I'm on. I'm going to tell them I'm resigning my position. But yeah, I haven't really had to sever too many relationships just because, like I said, they're part of my family. And while they have asked me multiple times if I was coming back to church, they actually have stopped doing that because they've realized that I'm probably not coming back. So.
And did they ask you why you stopped going, or they just wanted to know if you'll come back?
Not really. Not really. My uncle did kind of ask me why. He was probably the only one that asked me why I stopped coming. And we had the conversation about why I stopped going. It wasn't, I was seeing a lot of the judgmental behaviors as well, but that wasn't the main reason why I left. That was part of it, but not the main reason. And so I talked to him about my just not understanding or not believing that Jesus is holy, is, all of the things that are being taught in the Christian religion. Um, and so he understood where I was coming from. And he basically just, let me be pretty much. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Vinay, how about you?
So, talking specifically about my family, the one that I'm the most closest, my mom, when I told her, the only thing that she said was, it doesn't matter which church you go to. To her, faith is faith. I can understand, because she's one of those people who fought a lot of practices within the church. She was one of those, who fought for, like, why can't you have this right in the church? Why can't we? I mean, that's how she grew up. She stayed in faith, but she fought every bit. I have heard her argue with bishops in the open about stuff in the church. She didn't let them know what she thought about things. So she was never very shy about those things. So and I told her the reasons, and she never said, "Oh, you should go back to Catholic," and never, not once. In terms of friends, so funny that we had a young and adults group at the church that I went to. We all stayed good friends. We are still good friends. We still meet, have dinner together. I met my wife there too. The one group that I sever tied with was the Knights of Columbus, because I was, if you're a guy, obviously you get invited to Knights of Columbus. After a couple of years, I was the only one that never progressed. I went to the social events, but not that many. I did not sign up for anything. And they would keep asking me, "Hey, when are you going for the next office?" I'm like, "Nah, take a pass right now." And finally I said, "Guys, I'm out. Take my name off the roster." They still send me emails. And I told them multiple times, "Hey, I'm never coming back. You can take my name off." But they still send me an honorary card, like last year, for a free membership for a whole year. I'm like, okay, thank you. Not many. My friend circle is very, very small, and so what I call acquaintances, I never paid attention to what the reaction was. Never did.
Okay, well, the cheese stands alone. I guess mine sounds like the really dramatic one. I had like a very dramatic, like, walking out situation, because it was maybe, honestly, maybe like the most upset I've ever been in my whole life was after not even a confrontation. It was just, I was in social work school and was working for an organization that was about strong families. And I wanted to get a photo because I was building the website. This was a while ago. It was before we had Squarespace or whatever. And so I was taking all the photos myself and building the website. And so I wanted a picture that was representative of a lot of different skin colors and ages, and to represent, because strong families, like, we really were trying to include like grandparents that were raising kids, same-sex parents, etc. And these people I was very close to, I spent all my time with them. As a young adult, after college, like, that they were like really a surrogate family, and it was a much larger group that we were a part of, and we were very close, like, did everything together. And they wouldn't be a part of the picture because they didn't want to possibly be part of something that was going to promote that it was okay that same-sex couples could be parents. And I just was totally stunned and kind of tried to talk to them about it. And then, like, it went really, really badly. And I just ended up walking out, and I don't know that I ever really I've never really talked to them ever since then. And not like in a mean way, really. I literally just didn't know how I didn't know how to have that conversation with them in it felt like the kinder, loving thing to just, I guess, sever that relationship or those relationships, because I didn't know how, like, if you can profess to these beliefs about love and God's children, and really, even when it boils down to it, the church's teaching, if you do the math, like all of that, like they were completely unwilling to, and just like the people I thought that they were questioning, that they were open, like very open-minded about their faith, asking a lot of questions, and very into discussion, and like none of that applied. Like it was all just like, no, the church teaches this, and we can't be a part of anything that's against the church's teaching, even if it means that we're, I mean, even like alienating. I know that people that were there in the room who were gay. And it was just so just devastating. And it was also like a trust issue. Like I thought I knew who they were, and then they weren't who I thought that they were. And that's been very dramatic with my family. So I'm glad that you all had a better experience than I did. For me, I just felt more like it just didn't feel aligned with who I was. And that's, I think I don't really have a lot of antagonistic or feelings of hatred, or, like I don't have any of that at all towards my prior community or the faith overall, really. It just wasn't a fit for me. So anyways, but that's hilarious that I'm the only one that had like the walkout, and had my mother, accusing me of all of these things or whatever. Okay. So after that process, and some of you have kind of touched on this, but what was the process that you felt like it sounds like in some of your cases, it was that specific denomination, or possibly even that specific congregation or community. Takeda, for you, it sounds like maybe it's a little bit more like a broader issue. So then what is the process then of like, did you look for a new spiritual community? Did you find something? Do you feel like you don't need one now or ever? Takeda, do you want to go first on that one?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't know. Right now. I am still wrestling with my thoughts on theology in general. And so I feel like maybe, and because I was United Methodist, and I don't feel like it was that particular congregation necessarily. I feel like it was just, yeah, it was just broader. It was just bigger than that. It was much bigger than that, because I'm just wrestling with the whole, the entire thing. So I don't know if that doesn't really answer your question, because I don't know right now. I don't know.
And and if this is not at all related, if I didn't hear this right, but and this is kind of a later question that I have too, but
yeah.
I was just reading some stuff about some reconciliation work that the UMC is doing, specifically related to the Native communities.
Yeah.
They just had a big exhibit about the Sand Creek Massacre, which my ancestors were in, so I was like really interested in that. But when you have an issue, or if you have an issue with that sort of historical, like the role of, look at Catholicism and colonialism, for example, when you look, and the UMC seems like they're trying to acknowledge their role in like the Sand Creek Massacre or these other horrible things that they did in the name of their beliefs or whatever. Does that help with you? Does that mean anything to you, or what does that
me
mean for you?
personally, yeah, personally, it means a lot to me. And I know that they've been re-examining the way that they approach the homosexual community and women in leadership and those sorts of things as well. So it definitely means a lot to me. But do I think I'm gonna come back? I don't know. I don't know, but it's promising to see that they're making those strides. And I know one particular church that I have attended more just because I have a friend who is the music minister, and he's asked me, it's like a contemporary service, and so they ask um, to have contemporary songs, and sometimes they're gospel, sometimes they're Christian songs, sometimes they're secular songs. And so I'll go and sing sometimes. And I know that they like to acknowledge like the four winds and all of those things that are very important to indigenous cultures. And so it's definitely, it's definitely promising. But
Okay.
as far as where I'm going to end up, who knows?
Okay. Well, thank you for answering it. That was kind of a left field
Yeah.
question, but Vinay, how about you? I know you said you found a new community that you really love. What was that process like?
So one of the details that I forgot to mention was I was an altar boy for 3 years at my church. So that's how ingrained the previous faith was. So when I left, it was like for a couple of years, it was like a sailor's ship. I mean, I did not want to associate with the church. Did not, because that's all I knew. That faith is all I knew. And I looked around. I didn't really want to join another church. Pretty much not interested. And then I think it was one time we went to a church where my wife went a couple of times, and to me, church is a place. I call it my Faraday cage. When I go there, when I go to the place, I'm comfortable at my. Everything stops. It's like a place that I decompress. No thoughts come in and go. I'm just there. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm thinking about when I come out of the church. That's the kind of place that I was looking for, and I found one. And to me that was the key. Nothing related to anybody talking to me or hey, try this, try that. It was just me finding that myself. Am I comfortable in that environment? Okay, this is the place for me. So that so to speak, it was just a self discovery, so to speak, if you can say that.
And had you visited other churches where you didn't quite feel that, or was this the first other one you had tried out?
Yeah, I did not even go to. I mean, even some of my head, I'm like, I don't want to. I will be jumping from one fire to the other fire, so to speak, right? And most likely, if it wasn't for my wife, I probably would have stayed for longer, not associated with any. Because of her, I took a chance to go there, and was okay. Church that I go to, woman is a priest. She's the one who is the head of the church. The church is run by the people, not by some dictate from some higher order. So everything that I was, turned me away from my previous faith, I found in that in the new one. I mean, it's an Episcopalian church basically. So I call it Catholic Church without the guilt. And I grew up with all kinds of traditions. I loved it. I always loved the songs, the prayer. I growing up, you could not go to church without a properly ironed clothes, polished shoes. Jeans wasn't allowed. I still love that, but and a lot of it, those traditions are still in the church that I go to, but again, without the baggage and the guilt.
Yeah, so the community that you went to, the worship service is pretty similar, and it's a very similar, I would say, for lack of a better word, vibe.
Yeah.
So it's
And
is that part of what you would want to find in that community that you wanted, was like a lot of the same, like those sensory things, like the music and the.
I love those, and yes, yeah, and the community aspect of it too. Even the church, the previous church, there was a community aspect of it, even though I did not agree with what most of the people believe, but there was still a communal aspect to it, like, having together, hang out, do stuff together and things like that. That is still here, but without, again, and I found that so many people are like me. They came from the same faith as mine, and they had similar views of, yep, I love X, Y, and Z. I love the church. I love the processions. I love um, all the bells and whistles that comes with it. But it's a place where that I feel at peace. I'm not told every sermon that I'm going to hell or heaven, or if I don't do X, Y, and Z. You know, that guilt is not there. Not once I've heard my pastor say, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to hell or heaven. To me, that's how it should be.
Okay, thank you, Aubrey. How about you? Do you feel the need to find a new community? Are you fine the way you are? Do you feel like anything's missing?
So, like, when I first left, I was just leaving because I didn't like how the community I was in was living out the faith. And so I did try to find other faith communities, honestly, still within the same denomination that I thought maybe were living out that mandate a little bit better of, loving their neighbors. But after some time, I had two big realizations. The first was that I didn't believe in God. And so it was a little weird to sit through a couple hours of a service when I didn't share the big main common idea that everybody else there did. And the other thing was, with some space from my original community, I finally had language to understand that some of the things that I experienced were abusive and neglectful, and I was traumatized by those experiences. And so, walking into a very similar setting that uses a lot of the same language, there's the same symbols, even if they're well intentioned, even if I think that they are loving their neighbors and doing these things that I was wanting my community to do, it was still very triggering. And so I did try, and then I was like, it's not just my community. This is just Big C Christianity is just clearly not my place. And I have tried to find the community and the outlet of loving my neighbors in different ways, because I do think that's a value that I very deeply internalized, even separate from believing in God or Jesus or anything like that. I think one, I found that outlet in being a social worker, and two, I tried to be very intentional with my friendships and my family and the people in my community, because that's something that I wanted my original community to do. So regardless of a faith community, I'm going to do that in my personal life and be live up to the standard that I was expecting others to. So that's where I ended up.
Very cool. I love this conversation because I think there's so many people who are having these same kinds of questions and haven't really figured it out. And is there a place for us? It's one of our earlier conversations in this series. She's doing like a micro church thing. So she's a UMC pastor, but it's real, like she's just trying to meet people where they are. So like they go on hikes. and they go to brunch or they have a book club. I just kind of want to start these conversations to see if there's something out there, because I do think that as a community of humans, we all really need to be in community more, whether that's volunteering or hiking or in like a specific like church or temple setting or whatever. And we talked, Takita, we talked about this a little bit with you, but what could your previous faith community do differently that would tempt you to return, if anything? Aubrey, I don't know if you feel like maybe that's a null question for you, but Vinay, what about you?
Allow marriage within the church, give up this big, hierarchy of coming down. It's its own country, so to speak. Have more people control, and give up their power.
Okay. Well, it sounds like your current community has a lot of the same things, but they have a lot of the things that you like, but without some of the more like political power, money kind of factors.
Correct.
Okay. Takita, what do you think?
I would like to see my previous faith community be more hands-on when it comes to justice, and that would be huge for me. So whether that be, we see all of the things happening in Minneapolis right now, and that kind of thing. If I saw something like that, I would be tempted to come back and just know that I might have to wrestle with the bigger questions on my own, maybe, or maybe get some sort of just peace with that, knowing that I'm not going to get everything from one place, that I might have to look for different communities to find different things that I'm needing. So I wouldn't say they'd have to change absolutely everything, but I would like to see, if I saw that would be huge. I mean, and I think it's because I know how important the Black church is to Black people in America, because it's been, a historical beacon for so many African Americans in this country over the years, and especially during things like the Civil Rights Movement and all of that. So I would like to see more of that, but I'm not seeing it right now. I'm just seeing a lot of, hey, do you feel good when you leave church on Sunday? Great, then that's it.
So like if you saw that some of the clergy from your community went to Minneapolis for that clergy call, would that sort of like inspire you to like check out some of those churches?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And more vocal about things that are just happening in our world, our politics, I want to see some boots on the ground, basically. And I'm just not seeing it right now.
Okay. Aubrey, any thoughts?
If my like OG church was actually engaging in the community, and I don't mean like putting half effort towards like a food pantry that they keep on the porch and leaving it at that. Like, I mean, like actually engaging in the community. Like we're using the extra land we have for like a community garden. We're like opening our doors when there's weather events. We're not turning away unhoused individuals. We're meeting people in their need. We're like supporting recovery programs and things like that. I would show up and help with an event. Like I would. They've done some stuff recently, like housing some nonprofit events. And if that trend continues, I would 100% show up and like put some sweat equity in there. they'll never like get me back as a member, somebody who regularly attends, because the leadership has not changed. And those were the people making the decisions I disagreed with. Those were the people pushing back when individuals like me were like, hey, let's start a community garden. And they were like, well, if you want to, but we're not going to help. We're not going to leverage any resources. We're just going to put all the responsibility on you. Those were the people ignoring red flags about abusive behavior and protecting individuals perpetrating that behavior. And so if they're still there, I highly doubt those trends have changed, but I'm not so above it all that if they were like, hey, we're having like an actual outreach event and we need help, that I would refuse to, like, I would show up. But I don't know about like regular attendance and paying tithe and all that fun stuff.
Okay. Okay, so along this kind of same lines, why do you think people, especially young people, don't participate in faith communities anymore? Do you feel like there's similar reasons to like what you all have experienced, or do you have other ideas? Vinay, what do you think?
I think because of the environment they're growing up, they can see through the BS quite a bit easily. How, don't want to sound like I'm too old, but you grew up in a traditional house where you went to mass. I mean, that was the thing, right? It doesn't matter whether you believed it or not, it did not matter whether you wanted it or not. If you can walk and talk, you went to church. That was not there was not an option not to go. You could sit there and cry all day long, but you're going to church. And that was changed into, okay, now it's an option. So I guarantee you, if a lot of us in that time period, if we were given that choice, probably would not have chosen it. But now people have a lot more choices that they can not go. And they see through quite a bit of it. I mean, everything is out there in the open, especially with social media, news. When it comes out that the church has been fighting to release the records, they've been trying to assimilate the same people that has been abusing the family and friends back into the society. I mean, how do you want to go back into the same community? Why would you want to go back into the same community? You would not. And a lot of people see through that.
Yeah, I work with young people as well. I'm an educator. So I think that, they are very much, they see their gay friends and they see their trans friends and they see their, so I think that it would be difficult for a traditional church to appeal to our young people. I think they would have to be extremely progressive, including the way that they handled things that are happening in their communities, in politics, in just all sorts of things like that. I think that it would be hard for them to see a value in a church that is just there to, again, make you feel good on Sunday morning and send you back out to the streets. So, that's one question I actually should have asked my students before I came today. But yeah, I think that they would have a hard time with a traditional church, and I wonder if that's why the church is dying or on life support or whatever it is right now. So
Okay. Well, Aubrey, let me add a little addendum onto yours because I'm curious about you. Just because you were with OFN for a period of time, and so many of the faith communities that are part of OFN or partner with us or do work with us or whatever are very very open to the trans community, very open to like females in leadership, a lot of those things that don't really come to mind with like a more traditional, especially Christian faith community. And so because knowing now that there are Christian faith communities that are out there that are open and affirming, that want to welcome trans community, they want to welcome BIPOC, they want it, that's just like part of who they are. They're very community minded, they're very justice oriented. Does that change your answer a little bit, or does that impact your answer a little bit about this? Like, because I'm always thinking, because I love OFN and what we do, I'm always like, if they just knew that all these faith communities were out there that would welcome them and totally accept them for who they are and love them, and fight for justice or whatever, that they would go, or they would join, or they would find that to be they would find a safe community for themselves. But is that naive? What do you think?
I think a part of it is there's a lot of very like bigoted beliefs and interpretation of scripture in the church, and that can be a turnoff to people in my generation. I think a little bit of it just comes down to the fact that like a lot of these communities aren't offering something that my generation can't get somewhere else. In that, like, you're saying you're offering community. How does that community look different than my like book club that I go to? Like, what's different about it? How are the relationships deeper? Are we actually like fostering like human connection and a safe space for vulnerability, where people can actually connect and grow a relationship? Or are we just like showing up and like having a fun little book club and then leaving? Because like I can do that somewhere else. Or are we like prioritizing our lights and smoke show for our music, and not pouring into anything else because I can just go to a concert, and it asks less of me, maybe not financially, but like of my life, to just go to a concert than to like invest in this church community just because I like how your music sounds. I think too, like people say like, oh well, the community, like we've kind of lost like that understanding of community. Community is not just like we're all in one place. Like community is like the relational aspect, and I think churches have, a lot of them have decided that my generation is seeking like novelty and stimulation. My generation has plenty of that. What we are lacking is the relational piece. And so I think churches have kind of gotten into this weird like cyclical thing where like the church stops embracing community, and so like the broader society stops caring about community, and as community erodes, then like the church begins to erode, because that's a huge piece of what the church was offering, and they stopped offering that. And so now we're in like a weird thing, and like social trust like degrades, because what the church can be is a third space, and those third spaces equal healthy societies that trust each other and have strong community and care. And so I think when the church kind of steps back from that role, everything starts to crumble, and now the church is like, well, like nobody's coming in our doors. Well, what are you offering that like we can't get anywhere else? And so I think that's a big piece that I see like among my peers who have also left our original faith communities. Yeah.
Oh, I missed you, Aubrey. Do either Takita or Vinay, do you have anything to kind of round that out or add to that before we wrap it up?
No, I think Aubrey hit it.
She's good. She's really good. Okay, well, thank you all so much for this conversation. This was really wonderful. I just find it very refreshing. So I really appreciate you all taking the time. Do any of you have anything you'd like to share that we didn't cover?
So you talked a little bit about, you people wish all these places that young people could go. So what kind are you guys doing anything especially for the young generation to to maybe bring them back to the community, not to a faith community per se, but to a community, so to speak, whatever faith that may end up be. That to you, Kat.
I mean, I think to that question is sort of like the thing that it offers is that spiritual connection that is, I think, a basic need of humanity. I think we all have a need. And like when you look at the, even like taking mental health first aid, all the little, there's like 8 pieces to your self-care, your well-being or whatever. And so it's like environmental, social, educational, blah, 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 but spiritual is one of them. And so I think it's hopefully having faith communities that can tend to that need and create that safe sort of sacred space, like Vinay, like you said, you know, where they can just sort of turn all this other stuff off, connect with either like themselves going inside or with some type of sacred like spirit, whatever it is that they believe in. And then there's all this other stuff that's like part of the packaging, right? That's like, that's the part that can be so problematic and be a barrier. You know, like Aubrey, you mentioned that like, even in these really like great communities where they're doing all this great work or whatever, like it's still part of that packaging, like still is a little hard to swallow or triggering. And so I think that's part of the reason for this conversation is to sort of prompt that type of thinking about how can we remove some of those barriers so that people feel like they have a space they can go. And it's not going to be this whole problematic or fraught experience that's going to come with all of this expectations or judgment or pressure. It's instead it's a place to experience joy, connection, connection with other people, connection with spirit or whatever, like higher power, whatever they experience. And that can happen in nature, like what Reverend Jen is doing as part of one of her micro churches is I think she calls it outsiders experiencing awe. And, you know, I think she does she gives them like a prompt at the beginning of the hike. That's just like a broader question for them to sort of just like consider. And then they hike in silence. And then halfway through, they kind of sit and have a snack and kind of talk through like what were some of the things they were thinking about, like considering, you know, where it's something that's drawing them closer to themselves, to consider what's important to them, connect with their values, things that are drawing them. I recently heard a quote, someone saying to believe teachers or follow teachers who always instruct you to go back to yourself and to listen to yourself, to listen to your body, instead of teachers that tell you to look somewhere else for authority or to look to them for authority. So I thought that was a very wise, maybe thing that we're trying to cultivate is a place where people can feel safe to come back to themselves and their own sacred nature, where they know in their body who they are, what's important to them, what matters. They can experience love. They can get away from fear, experience joy, nature, just that simplicity. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we're just hoping to just kind of just start some of these conversations. Thank you all so much. We lost Takita, but thank you, Takita, Aubrey, and Vinay. Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Kat.
Thanks.
All right.
Nice
Good
meeting
night,
you
you all.